Hi everybody, this is Caroline Sotheby and welcome to Up, Down, and Around Town. All right, a lot of things been happening down in Cable and around this area. Last Friday we finally went and gave a farewell little situation to our former director here. Amy Canatella is finally going to retire and enjoy her life, and at least she's hoping to. But we did go to a couple places. Thursday, this was at the City Hall Council Chambers, and a group came in for lunchtime, and she, as well as our former director, Steve Caldwell, and another person that's taken his place. Now, this was all decorations. People were coming in and out. As a matter of fact, I was going out, and they were going out, and I was coming. Well, whatever. Anyway, it was people that gathered there were having a little get-together and saying goodbye. This was Amy there. Had one more day to go as of this point, and that's Steve Caldwell, who had been a director at one time. The girls actually did, well, I shouldn't say just girls. Girls and Joel actually went and had the decorations on the wall as well as on the tables. And happy retirement, Amy. Take care, enjoy yourself, and think about us once in a while back here. Anyway, with me right now is our new director, video programmer director, and explain one thing, because I had just asked a question. How did that become effective? We were at once thinking it was studio director.
Yeah, so I mean, so the last time I was on your show, I joked about my title on the W-2. So yeah, the new title, and I'm not sure how far back it goes, but it's a studio programming director. Studio director would probably be a lot easier to say, a lot less of a mouthful. I'll have to ask some older directors if that was their exact title. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. When the changes were made, I don't know.
Okay. Well, anyway, Friday was another farewell to her across the street, and that's when even Keith Dameron was there, who was way back, who's right now is a professor at Eastern.
Yep.
So it's like, it was fun time. It was fast, but at least it was hi, remember when, and all this sort of stuff.
Well, interesting story about Keith. When I began volunteering here back in 2010, I didn't know Keith had any connection to this place. I had Keith as a professor out at Eastern.
You did too?
In 2004, yeah, he was my TV lab professor. And it wasn't until I started, actually it wasn't until I started working here as playback operator in 2014 that Keith's name came up a few times. And I was like, I know that name. You guys know him? And that's when they told me, yeah, he used to be the director of the studio. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of those small world moments.
Okay, now that you're in this position, you think back when you actually started and what transpired from that time to now.
You mean in the studio, for me personally?
Well, your family situation.
A lot, yeah.
Yeah, quite a...
When I first began volunteering in 2010, a lot's changed. Time since, I've become a dad twice over, joined the JCs, did a lot of projects there.
Yeah.
And then, of course, started working here, and I've done every position in the studio now. So, yeah, a lot. And, technologically, we moved from, of course, the old studio over here, and that's when we got HD cameras and LED lights that are, if you've never been on a even a small studio set like this, the LED lights make such a difference. Do you remember how hot it was under those old lights? You would sweat sitting under those during a show. These give off, you could put your hand on these and it won't burn you. You hardly feel like anything.
There's so many more things that you can do with it too, with the coloring and everything else.
Well, yeah, it used to be you had to climb up there and put up the colored gels if you wanted to get an effect, you know, if you wanted it kind of spooky to do like a blue or a purple or a red. And well, now with the LEDs, we've got a machine in the control room that we just control it right from the board.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot nicer and a lot safer. Nobody falling off a ladder.
Well, I think just a little while ago we started talking about, actually in 1983, 84, that's when the group of us actually came in to volunteer. And at that point, when any activity was at the football field, the crew would go there. Right now, you have everything computerized. Mm-hmm. You set it in, and hopefully it's going to go out. There, it was all, okay, let's get the programs off that are on the agenda, get them all set, put them in and out, and then, of course, you had to rewind everything.
Yeah, you know, well, we were talking about that earlier with Neil, our current playback operator, and even when I began as playback operator just 9 years ago, so 2014, we were still utilizing DVD players and even VHS players in our day-to-day operations. That was the playback system at the time. Now, it was integrated with, I believe it was called the Laytronics computer. So you would program the individual units, be it a DVD player or a VHS player, and you would tell the computer, okay, I want this one to go on at this time, this one to go on at this time. When we moved over here, that's when that changed. We went to, nowadays it's an all digital system. We're actually on our second playback system in the time since we've moved over here. And yes, much less time consuming to schedule. You drop in your file on a timeline and it generates you know, the time code, and it generates a graphic for it that viewers would see on channel 15. So yeah, a lot easier than it used to be. Yeah, swapping out DVDs and VHSs.
And we don't know exactly what's going to transpire another year or two. I think you talked to Neil, and he was saying something else going to come in.
Yeah, I mean, you know, technology turns over at an exponential rate, so you always got to have your eyes open for what's coming next. The cameras we have now, nice cameras, they're HD cameras. They were installed along with when we moved over here in the spring of 2014. But yeah, it's getting to be time within the next couple of years here. We will start looking to possibly upgrade those cameras. I think the prior models we probably had close to 20 years. So there may be some cost considerations.
Are you talking about that Sony?
This one's not terribly old. This one is even this is a bit outdated now. What we're recording on in the studio is a little more complex. This one's it's an HD Sony camera. This was really meant for remote productions. It's a lot more lightweight. If you pick it up compared to one of the Panasonics we have, those are much heavier. Those are, you know, more for a permanent structure. So yeah, we're on 9 years with those now, but yeah, there's several advances in camera technology in the time since, and it's all really just a matter of cost, you know. Like you probably remember, we've replaced the monitors on top of the cameras a couple of times, because their lifespan's just not as long. They lasted us maybe 7-8 years. The cameras lasted a little longer, so yeah, really just a matter of cost versus usefulness.
And that means budget.
Yep. Yeah, and thankfully, you know, we have a capital improvements budget where we look at that kind of stuff. Of course, you know, we've got you know, our backdrops, which are referred to as Sykes. You know, basically very large, heavy curtains. And they look nice, but I think one thing in the next couple of years we'll look to do, they make these LED versions. They're basically large LED curtains, and just like the lights that we use to light the set, you can light those up any color you want. You can do patterns, and you can automate it. Yeah, they come with a price tag. Last time we looked, about $20,000.
Oh, was that all?
But yeah, but you know, that's why those improvements, you know, they come at a slow pace because they're expensive.
Well, yeah, and you got to figure out, okay, which do I need
Right.
most
Yeah.
right now?
Right. Yeah.
And yeah. Well, for some of us that had been here for many years, and then we had a lot of people here with a lot of productions and everything else, we're trying to say, hey, if you like to do something, you want to try something, a program, or come down and volunteer to help out for many other things. Like you were mentioning about the curtains. Okay, we have the blue curtains, we have gray curtains.
Yep.
We have platforms that you can put up in case you want to have different angles. We even have our green wall that's
right.
behind this curtain.
We do have the green screen.
There's at least we have the one setup when you see
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, there's Rick and Dan of Sportsline.
And that one is showing where the
This is what we're looking at right now.
yeah. From our angle, that's the camera 1, middle 2, and that is 3, and that's our little monitor as
there's
we're
the
sitting here.
Ampesound
We
set.
can
Now that blue one was replaced last year.
Right.
Its predecessor was from 1996. The gray one.
That's been here
Still,
forever.
yeah, still needs to be replaced. Yeah.
Those are the platforms that we talked about that they're set up right now. They're just standing against the wall, waiting for somebody to make use of them. And yep, and there we took a shot of Barb at this time on the audio
Yeah,
board.
I think our audio board has, what is it, 16 channels? Got
Yeah.
a couple of them dedicated to the CD player. Yeah, Bart, oh, there's me and Ken on Local Sports Wrap Up last week.
Yeah,
I think that's when we were getting ready.
yeah. And she was taking. There's
That's
a
where I
lot.
saw the camera.
Okay, so that's as far as we got in regards to that, except for, of course,
That's-
the
yeah.
local sports wrap-up.
There's one of the TriCaster screens right there. Yeah, that's our switcher. Yeah.
Okay, so maybe next time if we can try to get their interest, we'll go back there and show them the switchboard, the monitors, the EDIUS and all this, and then people probably don't even realize that this department actually takes care of the meetings in the council
Yeah,
chambers.
I guess I always take that for granted. People may not know that. Yeah, it's. I guess you could argue it's certainly one of our primary functions here. We cover a pretty good portfolio of the city meetings. City council, municipal services, obviously, but we also cover zoning, planning, DDA. I mean, I may be forgetting one. Yeah, and those, typically there's not many weeks that go by that we don't have at least 1 or 2 meetings in that week. Yeah.
Well, you have your council meetings every other week, basically.
Yeah.
And so that's usually when we do 1 or 2 shows here. So you guys are split between that department as well as here.
Yeah, and those are always interesting nights when if you've never been to the 3rd floor of City Hall, or particular in the council chambers of the studio backs, this wall behind us backs up to the council chambers.
Yeah.
And most times it's not a problem, but every once in a while, like when we have an episode of the Pro Wrestling Locker Room in here, we've had council people get word to the studio and say, hey, like, we can hear what's going on in the studio. Quiet it down. It's like, wait, what are you going to do?
Well, just like the inconvenience for us as well as up above, with people upstairs now on the 4th floor.
Yeah, and that's another thing that I was glad to see Amy had included in some of the future, year or 2 out, some soundproofing, which may look into speeding up the timeline on that one. Because if you're, you obviously know, but when we're doing productions, when you're like right now, if Neil, who's directing, if he were to even speak at a normal level, we could probably hear him. And it's a little distracting sometimes. So being able to sound dampen or soundproof the control room so that sound doesn't travel out here. And also, if you're walking in the hallways outside of the studio and there's a production going on, you can hear it. And because we share the space with other departments and now literally residents above us, it would I think it's one of my priorities this year to sound dampen at the very least, so that all that sound is contained to those rooms. We won't have maybe council people knocking on the door saying, what's going on in there?
Well, come on down. Come on down, help us. Well, that's why we used to talk about, there were many times we had bands in the studio, but most of them were done on a Saturday with most of your, departments taking the weekend off, so it wasn't too bad. But if you have to resort to a nighttime, and if there are meetings, you have to almost make them be aware, hey, we might get a little noisy, or this is between this time and this time.
Yeah, and those are the, I mean, with where our staff is at, we probably, we try to avoid scheduling too much at any given time. But, sometimes, people's schedules, if a show producer can only get in here, let's say evenings on Thursday nights, which is the case for PWL right now, it's not every Thursday we're going to have a meeting, but certainly a couple Thursdays a month, at least one a month, there's going to be a meeting at that same time. Yeah. So, yeah, there's been I hate to pick on them, but they're the rowdier bunch. There's been shows where we've had to say, like, now there's a meeting going on in the other room, so you got to tamp down the antics tonight.
Yeah.
And for the most part, that works.
Well, at least, hey, they're doing their thing.
Yeah.
So you can't say quiet down because that's not them.
It's like, just try not to talk at the top of your lungs for this particular show. Well, for the most part, we don't have any problems. It's just every once in a great while, the sound travels. Like these walls are very thin.
Well, you have your ceiling too that has open areas there, so that makes a big difference.
Yeah, the sound gets through.
Yeah.
And it can be an issue. So that's something I'll look to correct this year, so that we can limit those instances.
Okay. All right. What's your first and second and third projects actually going? Do you have ideas?
Yeah. One big thing is to get a new crop of volunteers. It's more difficult nowadays simply because everybody has a camera in their pocket on their phone and access to video sharing platforms like YouTube or Vimeo or streaming platforms like Twitch. So part of my goal is creating, I've always felt that the studio could be a place that it's a hub for creative people. And I know when I got involved, and I use myself as an example because I think it's a good one, I got involved here and was able to meet other people who were doing things in the community, like Bubba with his wrestling show. I ran camera for him at his live events for several years, and I directed his show. I met someone like Tony Maiello, a local artist at the street fair, and just so many examples where I would not have known these people. I've even gotten involved with the JCs, and I did everything in the JCs up to and including being president and chairman of the board and running the haunted house. None of those things would have happened had I not started as a volunteer here and got to know these people and made all these different connections. So I think that's goal one, is bringing in new volunteers, young volunteers. It doesn't have to be young volunteers, but that's when you want to get people, get them interested and hope they stick around for a number of years. And, one goes with the other, you get more volunteers. Like to see more shows in here, and those are the two primary focuses right now, bringing more awareness to the studio and getting people to come in here who want to learn video production, but who also they've got something to say about whether it's a hobby or a topic that they're interested in. And I know sometimes people could be intimidated by that process, but if
you think so?
If you Google a little show called The Mud Puppets that I used to do, you know there's nothing to be afraid of. Like, whenever someone brings a show idea to me and they say it might be a little out there, I'll say, hold on a second, let me show you a few videos. And then it's kind of like, oh no, I'll be fine. We'll be fine to do our show.
Okay. And it's one way of trying it out, because sometimes you have no idea that if you feel comfortable and you have enough material or guests, you become a regular show.
Yeah, and being in front of a camera, it's like anything else. The more you do it, the easier it becomes. And I know you do it every week, and I've enjoyed doing projects in front of camera since I was a child. So for me, it's it's like second nature. But I've seen people before. They get in front of a camera, they get very nervous. They clam up. You can sometimes even see people sweat or their lips trembling. And the more you practice it, that's all it is. Like it's not an inherent talent. You practice it and you get comfortable. And honestly, as we sit here and have this conversation, occasionally we'll glance at the camera to kind of address the audience. But as you're having the conversation, you kind of forget about them, and just get caught up in the conversation.
Yeah.
And that's why the time flies by, as we often say.
Like, wow, okay. Yeah. Well, that's one thing when I see a guest over there that's kind of like, oh, jittery. I'll say, don't pay attention to the cameras.
Yep.
You and I are going to talk. But if you want to say something to that person on the other side of the camera, that camera over there that has the light on is the one that's open, and talk to that.
Yeah.
What makes me feel great, sometimes after a production, somebody will say, you know what, I had a good time.
Yep.
And, well, it was worth it because you apparently were comfortable enough, you can relay what you're familiar with, and you still had a good time in spite of the cameras on you,
Yeah, and one thing I tell people who aren't familiar with production or certainly being in front of the camera is that the camera is only going to take the energy you give it and magnify it. So if you're comfortable and you're charismatic, the camera's going to magnify that. And if you're nervous, the camera's going to magnify that too. So, but it takes practice. That's all it is, like anything else.
Yeah. So if somebody out there is saying, hey, I don't know, should I try it? You can come as a volunteer first, all of a sudden see what's going on.
Yeah.
And if you want to do a production, you can start that too.
Yeah, I have a very welcoming mentality, and it was the same approach I employed when I ran the JC's Haunted House. Everybody was welcome to come and see if it was for them. So I mean, if people out there are interested, you can call my direct extension at City Hall. It's number 734-324-7138. Or they can email me, which it's J, my first initial J, Adkins, ADKINS, at wyan.mi.gov. That's the work email. Or even Cable Studio at wyan.org is a good one too, because that goes both to Neil and myself, so we both see it. Plenty of ways to get involved. I mean, other than the city meetings and the studio productions, we, of course, cover a number of city events like the parades, the graduation, other school events, a lot of sporting events. And, there's always the opportunity for someone to come in with an idea for a show that they can pitch themselves. And really, in TV production, video production, it's really limited to your own imagination. Like, how much do you want to put into a show? When my cousin and I were doing the Mud Puppets, put a lot into that show. It kind of became like a second job at times, and you're in here every week doing your shows. So, and people can come in, they can be a volunteer behind the scenes, they can do a show, and that could be a weekly show, a bi-weekly show, a quarterly show. There really is no pressure. There's no schedule you have to keep to. It's why they call it public access. Yeah,
and one thing too, this is very important for some of your groups. Your art, just like I had talked to Rich, who had helped me during the COVID time where we were out doing our shooting and he would edit and send to the studio. There's a lot of information that can be coming from the library, from the DDA. How many times has Joe Gruber come up with all these new things, and that's why it's nice that Pat Slack is on that group, and she's also a business person. So you get Pat talking, I mean, she can go.
Pat should have her own show. She could,
I know. Okay, we're getting a 5-minute cue. What can we say real fast, or?
Well, what we got coming up, we're hoping, weather permitting, we'll be at the Yak Arena on the 15th for the hockey game there.
Okay.
Just, it's, a number of things happening here at the studio. Obviously, a transition anytime director goes and there's a new director, literally kind of rearranging the physical space.
Yeah.
In the meantime, we've got our usual productions and city meetings that we have to, that they pay us to deal with. So yeah, we have to make sure that those get on the channel. But I think going forward and pretty quickly here. We're going to have a number of productions coming in. JC's TV is going to start back up.
Okay.
Neil has a video game show in the works, and I believe he could still use a few eager volunteers on that. Rich got a hold. You mentioned Rich. He got a hold of me. He has some programming ideas. So really excited to see where we're at in a couple of months.
Yeah. Maybe I should put a spiel here right now. I need a sportscaster.
Yeah, local sport. I mean, I know everyone. They might be tired of seeing me fill in on there.
But you're limited now because there's one less person in here.
Yeah, there's an opportunity. Marty's he's right entrenched in the middle of bowling season.
Yeah.
So if anyone out there is a budding sports announcer, it's a good opportunity to come down and get some time in front of the camera. And I think that's key. Like, you can get real world experience working with other human beings, because that's part of any job. It's one thing to be broadcasting yourself at home from various platforms, whether it's YouTube or Twitch, but working in a collaborative effort with other people from different backgrounds and different personalities, it teaches you a lot about life.
To blend.
Yeah, you got to learn sometimes you got to learn how to play nice. Sometimes you got to learn how to work a little quicker or even a little slower. And that's not necessarily the case when you're at home on your own. You kind of do things at your own pace. But I think it's a great way to learn, and it's free. You can't beat free learning.
That's right. Hey, thank you for coming on.
You're welcome.
It's your second day at work right now.
That's right,
in a different position. And I know you're already cleaning up here, office back there.
Been a lot of little things to do. Yeah, I came across some interesting artwork from one of our former directors today.
Yeah, he called Steve up and said, hey, found some of your clipping.
I wasn't going to out who it was, but yeah. Yeah, I found some artwork. I said, hey, I'm pretty sure this was yours. Do you want me to save it for you? And he came right away and got it up.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Good luck. And
Thanks,
hey, if you're really interested, come on down. Call him up or come. You can see us on the street and say, okay, can I help you? And I said, yeah, well, this is what day we're over here. And anyway, hope you enjoyed this. There's a lot of information given out, this time not by Pat Slack, but Joel Atkins. So take care. And thank you. We'll watch you and see you next time on Up, Down, and Around Town. Bye for now.